Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Can I have a mover and seconder to call this meeting to order, please? Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Cabral, that the special meeting of the Council Township of Springwater of August 24, 2020 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Due to COVID-19, Council is taking the necessary steps to limit in-person meetings. As such, Council members are participating in the meeting electronically, and the meeting's being live streamed. We have three staff and myself here physically distanced. You can watch the meeting live on the Township website at www.springwater.ca. You can listen to the meeting live from a telephone at 647-558-0588 and use the following ID, 865-7159-2036 and the pound sign. You can do that during the meeting, and for those unable to watch the live stream, they're able to review the meeting at your convenience by watching the video on the Township's YouTube channel. Council, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interests this evening? All right, seeing none, can I have a mover and seconder to call the public meeting to order? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ma. That this public meeting of Council held under Section 34 of the Planning Act for application ZB 2020-004 by M. Corey on behalf of 175-7704 Ontario Inc. Mixed Subdivision, ZB 2020-005 by S. Drury on behalf of the estate of G. Coates, and ZB 2020-003 by R. Langman on behalf of St. John's United Church be called to order at 6:33 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Welcome to this public meeting of Springwater Township Council held in compliance with Section 4 of the Planning Act to give the public an opportunity to express their views in regard to proposed amendments to the Township of Springwater zoning bylaw 5000 as amended. The first part of this meeting is to present the amendments. Following, the public will be given an opportunity to make an oral submission through the Zoom application. Any person wishing to make an oral submission must have notified the Township prior to 8:30 a.m. this morning and must have been added to the commenters list. If a person or public body who files an appeal of a decision of the Township of Springwater in respect of a proposed zoning bylaw amendment does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the Township of Springwater before the proposed zoning bylaw amendments are passed, the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. All comments or questions should be addressed through the chair. Oral submissions will be included in this meeting's minutes and form part of the public record, including the name and address of the speaker as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be posted on the Township's website. The first item is ZB 2020-004 by Matthew Corey on behalf of 175-7704 Ontario Inc., which is the mixed subdivision at 2683 Wilson Drive. I will now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given, please.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 28th day of July 2020 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 12 properties in the Township of Springwater within 120 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was also posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies, at a location that was visible from Wilson Drive, Snow Valley Road, and Carson Road. The notice was also placed on the Township's website.
Has the Planning Department received any correspondence in response to the notice of public meeting?
No correspondence has been received.
Thank you. I'll now call upon Matthew Corey of Malone Given Parsons to give a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal. Council members and the public can follow along with the presentation, which has been included in the agenda. Mr. Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You can all hear me?
Yes?
Wonderful. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of council, and to the public. Thank you for hearing us tonight. I do want to introduce Cheryl Shindrook, who I believe many of you are familiar with. She is the applicant in this case. Cheryl wanted to do a brief introduction prior to my very brief presentation to follow. Cheryl, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank
Well,
you. And,
welcome, Cheryl.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate council and staff for pivoting in this pandemic times that we're living in and holding virtual public meetings. It is greatly appreciated and very impressive at watching the setup for this evening's virtual call. I trust you're all healthy and well, and it's nice to see your faces even if we're not able to be there in person with you. This evening's public meeting and the zoning that is the subject of it is a small rezoning application to implement red line revisions that were endorsed by council earlier this year in the spring, just before the COVID-19 hit us all, and then was subsequently approved by the LPAT. So these minor adjustments to the zoning are intended to implement an already approved plan of subdivision. I'm here before I turn it over to Matthew Corey to say that we support the staff report that is before you on item 4.1 of your agenda and the recommendation for bylaw approval this evening by council. And we're looking forward to hopefully having that approval by the end of your meeting this evening. So with that, I will trust it over to the very capable hands of Mr. Corey. Matthew? Thank
you, Cheryl. Yes, indeed. And Cheryl, thank you for that intro. I think you've covered most of my presentation, which is great. The changes are just essentially a technical amendment to the zoning to reflect the changes that your council had already endorsed and was approved by the LPAT to the mixed subdivision. We have reviewed the bylaw and prepared the bylaw in concert with Brent, with the town staff, township staff, and we are very supportive of what's being proposed and here to answer any questions you may have, although it's pretty straightforward. It's aligning the zones in the bylaw to the changes to the plan and still in conformity with the Midhurst secondary plan. So obviously I believe it's good planning and happy to answer any questions you may have of any kind.
Thank you. I'll now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who've registered to ask questions or make comments regarding this application.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There are no commenters registered to make an oral submission in regards to this application.
Thank you. Do any members of council have questions or comments regarding this application? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I might have read this somewhere and I forget. What's the size, what's the number of lots of the subdivision?
Mr. Malone?
Mr. Corey.
Sorry,
Mr.
Corey.
I would probably be called Mr. Malone as well, but.
Sorry, Mr. Corey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's 339 lots proposed.
How many?
339 was what was approved. In terms of the plan of subdivision dating back, this is going back to the original approval that we had done. And then going forward to the revised red line, hold on a second, my computer is misbehaving, give me a second.
342, Matthew.
Thank you. Yes, I just got it up to.
What is it again?
So it went up to 342 with the changes that were endorsed by council and approved back in March.
Thank you.
So you're very welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mr. Councillor.
Any further questions, comments? Okay. Thank you to all. I don't see any other questions or comments. Thank you to all that participated in the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and for showing an interest in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night. The next item is ZB 220-005 by Sam Drury on behalf of the estate of G. Coates at 934 Penetanguishene Road. I'll now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 20th day of July, 2020, to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 10 properties in the township of Springwater within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was also posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies, at a location that was visible from Penetanguishene Road. The notice was also placed on the township's website.
And has the planning department received any correspondence in response to these notices?
No correspondence has been received.
Thank you. I'll now call upon Director Brent Spagnell, our Director of Planning, to give a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal. Council members and the public can follow along with the presentation, which has been included in the agenda. Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The purpose of the application is to fill conditions 5 and 6 of Committee of Adjustment Decision B0919. It's related to a surplus farm dwelling severance where the owner has applied to sever off the residential component of the property and rezone the property to an agricultural consolidation zone, which would prohibit the construction of a house on the balance of the farmland, but would also prohibit the keeping of livestock on the residential piece. This is a condition of consent, therefore approval is required in order for Mr. Drury to fulfill his conditions so that he can finalize his approval. Staff is recommending that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved tonight at this meeting so that Mr. Drury can move forward and finalize his conditions of consent. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Spagnell. I'll now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions or make comments regarding this application.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There are no commenters registered to make an oral submission in regards to this application.
Thank you. Do any members of council have questions or comments regarding this application? I am not seeing any, so I thank you all who participated in this public meeting with respect to this proposed zoning amendment and for showing an interest in this matter. The next and final item is ZB 2020-003 by Ross Langman on behalf of St. John's United Church at 23 and 27 Yonge Street South. I'll now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates on which notice was given, please.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 28th day of July, 2020, to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 59 properties in the township of Springwater within 120 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was also posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies, at a location that was visible from Yonge Street South, Houden Street, and Patterson Street. The notice was also placed on the township's website.
And has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of public meeting?
Correspondence was received from Marie Panos in a letter dated July 16th, 2020, and this letter can be found attached to the agenda.
I'll now call upon Director Brent Spagnell to give a brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposal. Council members and the public can follow along with the presentation which has been included in the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Similar to the previous application, the zoning bylaw amendment is needed to fulfill conditions 5 and 6 of Committee of Adjustment Decision B08, 2019. The effect of the zoning would essentially align the parking area zone to the institutional I zone to match the neighboring property and to allow for a 4-meter setback of the existing dwelling that's located on the property so that it can legalize the proposed setback that was considered through the Committee of Adjustment. The effect of the zoning, it conforms to the official plan. Staff is in support of the application and is also recommending approval of the application at tonight's meeting to allow for the St. John's United Church the ability to move forward and finalize their conditions of consent so that they can divest themselves from the residential dwelling and align the zoning of the parking lot with the church so that those two pieces could be merged. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Director. I'll now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions or make comments regarding this application.
There are no commenters registered to make an oral submission in regards to this application.
Thank you. And do any members of council have questions or comments regarding this application? Okay, I am not seeing any. So I need a mover and seconder to close this meeting. Councillor Ritchie and Deputy Mayor Coghlan, that this public meeting of council held under Section 34 and 39 of the Planning Act for the zoning bylaw amendment applications ZB 2020-004 by Matthew Corey on behalf of 175-7704 Ontario Inc., ZB 2020-005 by Sam Drury on behalf of the Estates of G. Coates, and ZB 2020-003 by Ross Langman on behalf of St. John's United Church, does now adjourn at 6:47 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. And so I need a mover and seconder for the first one, which is the ZB 220-004. Councillor Ma and Councillor Hannah. Are you seconding it, Councillor Hannah?
He's got his thing off.
Okay, I need a seconder for this, please. Councillor Ritchie, that the report from the Director of Planning Services regarding ZP 2020-004 Re 175-7704 Ontario Inc. Mixed Subdivision dated August 24, 2020 be received, and that a bylaw be submitted to Council for consideration at the August 24, 2020 meeting of Council to implement the red line revisions to the draft plan approved by the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal. All those in favor? Carried. Mover and seconder for the next item, please. Councillor Moore and Councillor Cabral, that the report from the senior planner regarding ZB 2020-005, re the estate of G. Coates Drury, 934 and 946 Penetanguishene Road, B 220-005 Drury, dated August 24, 2020, be received, and that, subject to the comments received at the public meeting, a bylaw be submitted to Council for consideration and approval on August 24, 2020. All those in favor? That is carried. And a mover and a seconder for the third one, please. Councillor Moore and Councillor Ma, that the report from the senior planner regarding ZB 220-003 St. John's United Church, Langman, 23 and 27 Yonge Street South, Elmvale, dated August 24, 2020, be received, and that subject to comments received at the public meeting, a bylaw be submitted to Council for consideration and approval. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to action reports, item 5. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table, please? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ritchie. I'm presuming that we want to talk about both of these, so we'll go first to 5.2, which is replacement of pumper 51. Council has read the report. Are there any questions or comments about the report regarding the replacement of pumper 51? I have a question. I believe Chief Kirk is on the line.
I am, Mayor.
This proposed new truck is replacing one that was a write-off because of an accident. Can you review for council how many years it was expected before we had to replace the one that was a write-off? And how many years if and when we go ahead with this next purchase, we expect to be the life of this vehicle?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, to you and the rest of council. That truck was a 2007, so it was due to be retired at 2027. So with the approval of a new purchase, provided it is a 2020 unit, that truck will remain in service for 15 years as a frontline apparatus, and then 5 years as a reserve truck. So 20 years in total.
So 2040 then?
That's correct.
Versus 2027. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council with respect to this? Councillor Hannah.
Here. I guess where I'm at a loss here is that we lost that fire truck as a result of an accident that was not our fault. I guess my concern is, why do we have to pay the remainder of the cost to replace it? Should it not be replaced by the person that was responsible for the accident?
Chief Kirk?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hannah, I am not really that familiar with the way the insurance works. I do, however, know that we had replacement value of the purchase price at the time, which was 13 years ago, and any equipment that was damaged as a result of the accident. I do not know if there's an ability to recoup the costs of our expenses through the insurance. So that's something we could definitely look into.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I need a mover and a seconder with respect to this item, please. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Moore, that the report from Director of Fire and Emergency Services regarding the replacement of Pumper 51 dated August 24, 2020 be received, and the council approves the purchase of a replacement fire apparatus not to exceed $614,724 plus HST, and that the funding to purchase the replacement apparatus be approved from the insurance proceeds and the remainder be allocated from the fire reserve. All those in favor?
Mayor Allen?
Yes.
My apologies. The motion that was on the table was 5.1 to approve both 5.2 and 5.3. At this point, unless both items were being pulled, because there is a mover and a seconder for item 5.1.
Yeah, I pulled them, 5.2 and 5.3. So what would you like me to do?
Okay, my apologies. It's just because they were moved and seconded, so I wasn't too sure of the disposition. But if they were both being pulled, then we can just pull that one motion from the floor and then submit the other two separately.
So we can go ahead and vote on 5.2
Yes.
now?
Yes.
Okay, we're voting on 5.2 as just read. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, moving on to 5.3, we have that on the floor, so we can discuss that, right?
Once there is a mover and a seconder.
Okay, a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor individually. Please, Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ma. Okay. Mover and a seconder to get it on the floor. Okay, this is community broadband request for expression of interest. Before we get into questions, I will turn it to CAO Schmidt to just give an overview of this topic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So, as most of you are aware, reliable, stable broadband internet has been a challenge for many years. However, with the current public health pandemic, COVID-19, this situation has been exacerbated as more and more people are working from home and students are attending school from home, resulting in a new normal. Some individuals may never return to what was previously referred to as a normal working environment, and hence having reliable, stable broadband is critical for them. As mentioned in the report, the CRTC has estimated that approximately 12% of Ontarians lack access to broadband services that meet their minimum service requirements. Those minimum standards are 50 megabits per second for downloads and 10 megabits per second for uploads. While most Canadians today have access to these minimum service levels, many rural and remote regions in Canada lack the infrastructure needed. Within Springwater specifically, there are a number of small communities, villages, towns in which broadband services are currently available. However, a large geographic area of Springwater is still very much rural in nature, and as such, residents living in these areas do not have access to reliable, stable broadband services. This can be confirmed by reviewing the Improving Connectivity for Ontario map. As well, staff has provided some samples in Appendix A that show different areas in Springwater which have a percentage of households who currently have residential access to the 5010 services. Staff has also recently received a number of complaints from Springwater residents indicating that their internet services are not reliable, and of course are hoping that the township might be in a position to assist. So with community municipal broadband, this is not something that typically you would see a municipal government engaged in, although there are some examples across the country. However, again, with the right partner, infrastructure, and business plan in place, it could be a successful partnership in which all parties could benefit, including the residents of Springwater. So in an effort to assist, staff is seeking council's approval to release a request for expression of interest on bids and tenders, which would gauge interest in any potential business partners. By issuing this request for expression of interest, the township would be better positioned to apply for the second intake of the ICON program, in which applications are currently slated for early 2020-21. Unfortunately, the first phase of that, or the first intake of that program has closed, and hence we're not in a position to apply. Alternatively, it would also put the township in a position to be able to respond to any other funding opportunities and/or programs such as SWIFT that may arise in the near future. I would just like to, before I hand it back to the mayor, just indicate too that this topic was a hot topic at the AMO conference last week. So this is not just an issue that Springwater is facing, it is an issue that many municipalities across the country are experiencing. In addition to that, we did hear from a few municipalities on what their experiences have been, and we found that the town of Caledon, as an example, their council approved a broadband levy in 2018 in which each year a certain amount of funds are allocated towards municipal broadband. So this would be something similar to what the township currently does with our capital infrastructure, whereby each year we levy a certain amount to go towards assisting with our capital infrastructure. That could be an alternative or an option should council consider walking this path and looking at potential funding opportunities. At this time, I'll pass things back to Mr. Mayor, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that members of council may have.
Thank you, CEO Schmidt. Council will also be in receipt of an email received from resident Jeff Kirk, not our fire chief, but resident Jeff Kirk by the same name, different spelling, who is creatively coming up with a unique initiative in his community in the township to research and bring better broadband to their local community. And so you would have read what he's done and the momentum that they've got. And so we're in communication with him as well to share information. So I'll open it up for questions, discussion with council. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I support this 120%. I've talked to different businesses in the township that are lacking the need for this, and for us to move forward and seek opportunities and try and fix this problem is a huge step. So I welcome this and the people that are moving forward with it. So I support it 100%.
Thank you. Councillor Cabral. Lips are moving, no sound.
Thank you. I, for one, would love to see this kind of happen. I was keeping an eye on the SWIFT program, and they seem to be moving, but I must admit they seem to be moving rather slowly. I guess my questions are, is this an application for funding, or would this be also subsidized by the township in order to do it, would be number one. And number two, these other locations, I know a number of municipalities have gotten their own broadband, but I don't know whether or not they're providing it to residents on a commercial basis, let's say, or whether it's like, say, in the city of Barrie, where a portion of the downtown core, they just simply are providing a high-speed internet. So I think the big problem is, even though I do have better internet where I am now, I used to be on a twisted pair where you couldn't do anything. It is getting better. The problem, I think, is that some of the areas that do not have access to even wireless internet also are the same areas that do not have access to reliable cellular coverage. And that's what's really presenting a huge problem here, is they can't even use, say, the WiMAX by Bell, or the Rogers has a Rogers hub that you can use, but those access the cellular network. So I'm just curious to know, these other locations, did they actually put up towers, or did they tie in and have one of the major players actually put up more cellular repeaters?
CEO Schmidt, do you want to tackle that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Cabral. So, Councillor Cabral, the idea of the expression of interest is really to go out and explore opportunities to see if there's any business partners that may be available. And to your point about funding, there would likely be some kind of an investment from the township, but at this stage, until we go through that exercise, I'm not sure what that amount could be. And it could be a multitude of things whereby we would have to look at the phasing of projects possibly, so that it's not a large hit all in 1 year potentially. It could be a phased project over a number of years. I know there are some other municipalities in Simcoe County that have gone out with expression of interest earlier this year, and they've signed on to memorandums of understanding, if you will, and the magnitude is approximately $500,000, give or take. So it's not a chump change by any means, if you will. But again, as I mentioned in Caledon, the example that they provided is that they are providing for some funds each year through their their operating budget to assist with putting some infrastructure in the ground. They're looking at spending $500,000 a year, give or take, and hopefully the investment leads to millions of dollars down the road, right? So, and some of the other municipalities that are involved, again, it has been infrastructure, it has been towers that they've been negotiating with different partners, and there's also areas whereby fiber has been brought in by various players. So again, this is part of the expression of interest, is really to kind of gauge the interest, to see what players we have out there. I have been in touch with Point to Point and ExploreNet as examples in the municipality, and we're willing to reach out to others as well through this process, because I really don't know who the other players are at this stage, to be quite honest. As you mentioned, the SWIFT program is up and running. The RFPs are closing, I believe, September 11th. However, with that said, there is no guarantee that any applications are going to be coming forth in Springwater. We haven't been approached by anybody through the SWIFT program that I'm aware of to try to put some investments in Springwater. So we thought, hey, this might be an opportunity whereby it's non-binding. We don't have any money on the table at this stage. The idea is to go out to do the expression of interest, come back to council with some potential options, and from there we can discuss whether council wants to pursue it further or not. So
This is an
Follow up,
attempt.
please.
This is an attempt to try to get us out ahead of the curve, so that, I mean, we're hearing regularly, weekly, from residents that are frustrated and can't see how they're going to be able to continue in this present environment with the lack of internet service that they have. This will better prepare us to dovetail with what the SWIFT initiative is, and And basically, the rural areas are not going to be paid attention to anytime soon by the telcos unless there can be some consolidation and of an expression of interest or a solution that can happen within the township to help expedite better broadband. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a bit of a follow-up. I'm looking at the numbers 50/10. My current speed, and I feel quite fortunate to have it, although you've already know that quite often I experience a bit of a glitch. I was lost twice on the previous meeting, and I had to switch over and use my cell phone as a hub. So, like, I'm all for it. I don't want anybody to think that I'm not. However, my speed right now, and I pay just shy of $100 a night, a month, is 7 megabits per second download speed. The standard that they're looking for is 50. My upload speed is 3. My neighbor across the road, which is with a different carrier, and they've been on the different carrier for a year now, their maximum download speed is 25 megabits per second. So I'm just kind of trying to illustrate to you that I feel pretty fortunate in what I've got, because I do have access to it. I can do the video conferencing. However, we fall very, very far short of this 50 megabits per second download and 10 megabits per second upload. So I'm all for it. I thought I was kind of doing pretty good, but compared to these numbers, no, I'm not, apparently. And I would suspect that there may be others sitting on council that live in a rural setting that may be experiencing pretty much the same thing, because you're right. The big telcos aren't going to spend money to come out to our places, just like the gas company doesn't.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder then for this item, please? Clerk Ainsworth?
Mayor Allen, it has been moved by Councillor Cabral and seconded by Councillor Chapman.
Okay. That the report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding community broadband request for expression of interest dated August 24, 2020 be received, and that Council authorize staff to prepare and issue a request for expression of interest for community broadband services on bids and tenders, and the staff report back to Council with the results of the request for expression of interest for community broadband services at a regular meeting of Council prior to December 1, 2020. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now, do we have to go back and do the two of them together? No. Okay. Can I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws, please? Councillor Moore and Councillor Maw, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the Mayor and Clerk, 5000-316, Re ZB 220003, St. John's United Church, 5000-317, ZB 2020-005, Drury, and 5000-318, ZB 220004, mixed subdivision. All those in favor? Carried. Mover and seconder to confirm and adopt proceedings. Councillor Moore and Councillor Ritchie, that the bylaw 220-062 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at a special meeting held August 24, 2020 listed herein be signed and sealed by the Mayor and Clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And adjournment motion, please. Deputy Mayor Coughlin and Councillor Cabral, that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 7:09 p.m. to meet again in a regular meeting on September 2nd, 2020 at 6:30 in the Council Chambers at Min Centre, Minising. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Thank you, those who tuned in.